Hello, welcome to the Jet Hairdressing Academy round uniform layer haircut. Today we're going over our first uniform layer. Primarily this haircut's got a very basic principle. Anything that's going to be deemed a round layer or a uniform layer just means you're cutting every piece of hair the same length. So you'll be cutting a line that always goes with the head shape. So looking at my block here, this is the kind of line you're going to get. Another way to look at it is if you were to grab your comb and place it on the head at various intervals. You know, the comb's obviously the same length the whole time, and that's the shape of the haircut working around it. So wherever you are, this placement of the comb kind of shows you what I mean. So another way of looking at this is if you were to stand all the hair on end at once, you'd have a much enlarged kind of electric shock kind of effect of the head, everything coming out the same, an enlarged version of the head. And that's the basic principle behind a round layer. Obviously it's very simple to talk about, cut every piece of hair the same length. In reality, quite a tough haircut to pull off accurately and to do it well. So today I'm hoping to help you through it and get you there. But like I say, once mastered, you know, it can be a useful thing to be able to do to maintain uniform layers and create round shapes. The good news is, those of you that have been using the app, square layer haircut, which you've already done with me, is exactly the same sectioning as the round layer. So what I mean by that is, whereas we've got a profile guide on a square layer, which you pull up square, on this haircut we still have a profile guide, but we're going to cut it round, following the head shape. Square layer had a radial section, which went ear to ear, so does round layer. So we're going to put a radial section in, instead of bringing it up square like we did in square layer, it's going to be round and follow the head shape. The back was pivoted with a square layer. The back's also got pivoted sections on a round layer. We used vertical sections through the sides on a square layer, and we're going to do the same on round layers. So the sectioning pattern, where the guides live, the pivoting, the vertical sections, round layer is exactly the same as square layer. It's just the methodology, the theory, very different. Rather than over-directing and bringing the hair up high, everything is going to come out straight from the head. So that's the basic theory for this haircut. We'll get on and do it, I think. So we're going to start with a profile guide, like I said, just under an inch thick is usually about okay, and that's where we'll begin, and that's what we're going to do now. Once you've sectioned off this profile line guide, we're going to clip each side away, just to keep everything clean, so we know exactly where we are and exactly where we're going. It's just good practice. Okay, so now we've sectioned off this guide and we're happy, we're going to begin by putting in our first guideline. Now obviously there's two ways of going about this really. Some people will tell you and prefer to go from the front to the back. Others will prefer to go from the back to the front. For me personally, I like to go front to back. I find that works for me. However, I don't ever set that in stone. What I mean by that is, for instance, if there was a very specific length at the front, I knew exactly where I wanted my layers at the front of the head to fall, then I'd probably start there. If I had a very specific length at the back in mind, I might actually cut a small one length into this haircut first and follow that one length line forward. If you want to do that, if you've got a very specific length, you can always do a few sections of one length on the back first, if that works for you, and then use that length to follow through the haircut. Or if not, you can do it my way and go front to back or back to front and just go in straight away without a one length line in there. I prefer to cut the one length line in at the end of this haircut. I just think it looks nicer. That's my personal opinion. So let's begin. The way to discover where your line is going to be and how it's going to look is really just by looking at the white lines of scalp that your sections leave on the head. So if I bring all this hair over here, I can see a white line of scalp which travels down the head. Looking at this white line of scalp, my section, that shows me the head shape. You can literally see the curvature of the head by looking at that. So that means the line that I cut needs to stay parallel to the line that I can see on the head. By parallel, I mean the line needs to stay the same distance from it, and that's what we have to do. So for the line to be parallel and the same distance, your fingers need to be mimicking the shape. So at the front it tends to dip down a little, through the mid portion of the top of the head it's quite flat, and then round the back here it's probably got the tightest curve coming down here, and then you've got this almost question mark type shape here where the head comes in and then pretty flat again. So it's this motion that we need to try and keep in mind of literally letting our fingers be parallel to the line of the head section that you've taken on the head. So another little tip I can give you that I find helps is that it's very difficult to make a curved line out of very long, big, straight cuts. Much easier to build a straight line out of smaller cuts, So I work on very fine sections at a time, and again, that's another tip to creating a nice curved line. So I'm going to begin at the front here, first of all, and I'm just going to pull it forward, because that's what the head shape would do. So going back to what I said at the beginning, if you're unsure of what is straight out from the head, for instance, if I was putting this hair there, I know that's not straight out, but if I was to put my comb on the head here, rest the big end of the comb on the head, you can see that that's straight out for that part of the head. Again, if I was on this little area of the crown here, for instance, and I was unsure, what to do with it, do I put it here, do I put it there? Another thing you can do is literally pop your comb on the head. So for instance, if I was pulling it up there somewhere, and I placed my comb on the head, I can see actually, no, it lives over there. Again, round the back here, if I was putting that up, just by placing the comb on the head, I can see under the neck here, you can see the downward angle that this has also. So that's just a little tip you can use if ever you're a little bit unsure of what is straight out from the head. And that's it, let's begin cutting. So I'm going to bring the front out first of all, looking at my head shape here. One more little tip just quickly to help you see if your fingers are parallel to the head is I rest my scissors on the head so that they're following the shape of the head, and I bring them up the hair shaft. If they match my fingers, if they're parallel, by parallel they should look like a number 11, then it's correct. So if I put my fingers in the wrong position now, here, and I have my scissors on the head shape and bring them up, you can see I haven't got a number 11, I've got a kind of V shape or a capital A, depending on where you're looking from. So little position with the side of the scissors on the head shape up to your fingers, I find that can help. Might not work for you, but try it if you like. So here we go. I'm going to cut mine just a bit shorter than my comb is, looking at the head shape, bring my scissors up, do they match? Yes, that's where I'm going to go. And you can see this section is probably just over an inch in the width, it's not very big. Now the next thing that's really important is that we don't keep too much of this previously cut hair in our hand. All I'm going to do is keep a very tiny chunk of what I've just cut and then pick up my next inch or so. And that way I should always be maintaining the correct length. So again, just going to bring this up. I'm going to look at the head shape here and again put my line in. Now before we get too far with this guideline, it's a very, very good idea to check your balance, make sure you're staying the same. So the great thing about round layers, because you're cutting every piece of hair the same length, you can measure it literally like a ruler. You can even buy combs these days that have got ruler markings on them. Mine hasn't got that, but there's a very simple way of doing it. If I pull the very first piece of hair I cut out to the front, and if I rest my comb against the head, pull the piece of hair up the length of the comb there. I can then get my pointing finger and my thumb, slide them down my comb till this piece of hair is reaching them now. So now I know that by the time we finish this haircut, the last piece I've just cut perfectly meets my fingers. Obviously this hair hasn't been cut yet, it goes beyond my fingers. So by the time we finish this haircut, I know as long as every piece of hair comes up and meets my comb, and I've done it correctly. So that's the great thing about this haircut, it's very, very easy to check. So let's carry on, check that, I'm happy. Again, don't forget, just gonna keep the very last crumb of hair that I can get away with from the previously cut section. And then I'm going to start to move around the curvature of the crown in a moment. This part of the head at this point is relatively flat. I'm going to check it by resting my scissors on the head. Again, just keeping that very last little crumb of the previously cut section. Again, don't forget you can use your comb if you're unsure what is straight out from the head. Do my scissor trick, which works rather well, I find as well. And then before you get too far, I've just done a couple of cuts there. I'm going to come to the front, measure it, so sliding this hair up the comb, sliding my forefinger and thumb down the head there, so they reach. I've got to about this position, so I'm going to check it, and as you can see, hopefully in the camera, this is meeting my comb perfectly, which is good news. Carrying on now around the head, don't forget, just keep this very last little crumb of hair from the previous section. Just grab that again. So that's going to be this piece of hair there. If the hair's falling down on your hand like it's trying to on me a little bit, don't freak out. Nothing a little bit of water won't fix, and it will stay out of your way quite easily. Hopefully not in your lady's face. Okay. Again, here's my little crumb of hair, you can just see it there. I'm gonna use my scissors, slide them out to check the line is good, and then I'm gonna carry on my line. And again, I'm just keeping this very last crumb of hair there, and I'm bringing it around the back of the head, checking this head shape, which is starting to tuck in a little now. Checking it with my scissors, and again, before you get too far, let's have a little measure up, check we're happy. Notice I always come back to the first bit of this hair I cut. Obviously the very first bit, it's the first bit I cut, so it has to be the length I wanted. If that's the first ever bit in this haircut I cut, everything should match that, because that's the most important bit. I cut it first, that was the length we were after, so that's why I always come back there. Then we'll come to the back here, and hopefully you'll be able to see in my close-up camera now, if I slide this hair along, it meets my thumb and forefinger exactly. If I go past it, if I go beyond it, it's bang on. So that's good news. Again, just going to keep the very last little crumb of hair that we can get away with here. Now you may find as you get around the back of the neck sometimes, it makes your life a little easier just to pop the head forward a touch. It just makes it a bit easier to allow your hand round that head shape under there. Again, just trying to keep a little bit of my previously cut guide. Here, checking the head shape, which I'm happy with, and in goes my line there. Okay, so don't rest on your laurels. It's good to measure up again. So again, slide the piece of hair along the head. Along the comb rather, slide your forefinger and thumb down, and at the back of the head here, this hair should all be reaching my comb, which it does, as you can see in the camera there. Good news, check the guide's right, we can move on. Just going to give my model a quick spray. These lights are drying me out quite a lot today. Okay, so just to touch on something real quick, I told you that we need to work on very narrow sections. And I also told you just about keeping the very last crumb of the previously cut section. This is to do with something that I call under direction. Over direction is a process where you can build up length by dragging the hair you're cutting towards the guideline. Under direction occurs when you push the guideline towards the hair you're cutting. So what that means is the guideline travels further to get to where you're cutting, thus the hair's getting shorter. So we've just cut this guideline, I've checked it, you've seen me. we know it's right. I just want to show you what under direction would do. Around this crown in particular is an area where it can happen quite a lot. So if I pick up my section here, for instance, I'm happy with. There's a couple of molting hairs there, I'll get rid of. So if I just pick up a section here around the crown, I can bring this up and I can see that I'm happy with it. Let's pretend I've just cut that. Good news. I know I've already cut this hair around here as well. It's correct. But what I'm supposed to do is just pick up this little piece of hair and use that as my guideline for the next section. If I keep too much of this previously cut hair and then pick up my next section, look at what happens. All of a sudden there's a short bit, which you can see in the close-up camera just there. Now this short piece here could quite easily trick me, couldn't it, if you look at that? Oh, there's a short bit, that must be my guide. No, it isn't. That piece of hair there, look what it's doing, it's being dragged. That piece of hair is here. That's under direction, that's the enemy on this haircut. If that happens, you could gradually get shorter and shorter, and before you know it, you've got an inch long underneath the haircut, which is going to be fantastic if you're aiming for everything to be the same. So that's the profile guideline done. That's a little bit about under direction. We know how to check it. This is checked. Let's move on. I'm going to split this down the middle with the profile parting, and then I'm going to do my radial guide, which goes from here to here. Okay, so I'm just going to clip one side of my head block out of the way. I'm going to cut this radial guide in one side at a time. I find it's much easier to deal with a radial guide in two halves rather than trying to cut the whole thing at once. So what I mean by two halves is I'll do this left portion of it first of all, followed by the right, or the other way around from where you are. So let's just do that real quick. Same kind of thing, about an inch, just under an inch wide, same positioning as square layer, those of you that have seen it, just in front of, just on top of and just behind the ear is the positioning for this section. So we'll just pop that in right now. And then we're going to clip two sides of our guide out of the way so we've got a nice clean portion of hair to work on. This is our radial section. We're going to be popping our guideline for this side. Okay, so radial parting sectioned off, ready to be cut. We're going to use the short piece from our middle guide we've already cut. That's going to give us our guide for our radial guide, and then we're going to do the same process as before, following the head shape, keeping our fingers parallel, working on nice and narrow pieces of hair to help avoid under direction. I'm going to carry on using the scissor method, checking the head shape and that my fingers are parallel to it. Keep the tiny little piece of the previously cut section. Add that to what you're about to cut. Checking that head shape. Again, we're going to keep to the same plan as we had done before. We're going to check this to the very first piece of hair we cut. So I am just going to take a piece here which is loose from the front. Okay, so just going to measure the front. I've got my loose piece here. I'm I'm going to slide that up the comb. I'm going to slide my finger and thumb down till I meet it. That's the length for after. That's the length we should have when we check this hair up here, which meets my fingers perfectly. It's good news. So let's carry on around the side of the head. Again, don't forget, we just need that very last piece of hair that we cut. So if you look for it in here, this is the very last piece of what we just cut. This little piece is going to stop us from having any other direction. You can see I've got very little hair to finish off down here now. There's my short piece, checking my head shape. And again, I'm just going to check just to make sure that very last cut there was the same. So I'm going to slide this piece of hair up the comb, slide my finger and thumb down to meet it. I'm going to bring out the very last piece here, and hopefully it meets my thumb and finger there just right, which I think it pretty much does, very much so does. Okay, that's the guide completed on that side. Now we're going to repeat that process on the other side of the head. Okay, so let's do this guide on the second side now. Same positioning, just on top of, just behind the ear. You can use your guide on the other side as a reference to also get it exactly the same positioning. And we're going to use a clip. Again, each side of this. I'm just going to keep my little front piece out for later that I'm going to need. Pop a clip in each side of this guide just to keep everything nice and clean, so we know where we are. There we are, there we have our nice clean radial section across the side of the head. Now we're going to cut that in the same fashion. So again, I'm going to be looking for my short piece in the middle, in the first cut guideline which is there, and then we're going to check the head shape, put this line in, just keeping the very last piece that we cut, bringing that around to our next section. Carrying on the same way. Don't get lazy. Easy to get lazy. I mentioned this before, you know, talking about where you're going on holiday, anything even more boring than that. Measure the hair against that front piece, and then measure the hair we just cut to make sure it meets that coat. That's very important. You shouldn't ever stop checking this. If you're doing this haircut, you're doing your guideline and you haven't checked it yet, then it's wrong. Without a shadow of a doubt, it's going to be wrong, I'm sure of it. You might get very lucky, I don't know, but highly unlikely. I still check mine this much if I was doing one, so the way I see it, you know, so should you. Again, just keep that very last little bit of what you cut, bringing that out, picking up the next bit of hair to be cut, carrying on. And again, without getting lazy, we're going to measure our front V. You can't see it quite from where you are. You may be able to see it better on my close-up camera. Checking it with my finger and thumb there. And again, bringing out this piece of hair which matches it just right. So, good stuff. Both guidelines of this haircut are now in. Profile guide, radial guide. We've already split our profile guide straight down the middle. Now we're going to split our two radial guides straight down the middle also. That's going to split the head into 4 quarters, just like it would be if you was doing a root or all over permanent tint application, for instance, 4 quarters. And then that'll bring us on to our pivoted section. So let's just split these radial guides before we move on. there we go, the head split into 4 quarters. So with the head split into 4, we're now going to release one back quarter. I always tend to, as a right-handed person, start my right back quarter first, and then we'll get into the pivoted sections. Okay, so let's get into the pivoting. I'm going to release one back quarter, like I just mentioned. For me, it's the right back quarter. The reason I prefer working with the right back quarter first is that I find it gives me a better body position. By going from the right hand ear and pivoting all the way around the head until I get to the left hand ear, I find that means I'm stood up straight, my fingers are pointing down head, it's much more comfortable. As a right-handed person, if I was to start the left-hand ear and work around to the right, it means I'd have to have my body like this, which obviously you can see I'm very bent. It's not going to be very good for my back, not very nice for anybody concerned. So my advice, if you're right-handed, go from the right ear, pivot all the way around to the left-hand ear. If you're left-handed, do the opposite. You'll be cutting your right hand, obviously. Start from the left ear and work around the head. That's my advice. Like I say, it's better in the long run to keep a good posture and position, good for your back, and it also allows you to see where you're putting the hair a bit better. So I'm just going to add a bit more moisture to my hair again, just to make sure it will section nicely. And then I'm going to begin my next pivoted section. So just to recap the pivoted, because you may not have seen a square layer haircut, pivoted sections are essentially sections which come all from the same position. So we've got cross on top of this head, we've got profile parting, radial parting, that gives us a cross. Obviously the cross has a centre, that's where all our sections are going to come or radiate from, however you want to talk about it. So our first section will come from that central point to a position just behind the ear. Our next section will come from the same place, middle of that cross, be slightly further round. Third section, again from the centre of the cross, a bit further around again, and you carry on that process. Probably looking normally to do about 5 sections, could be 6. I'm just going to twist these up for the camera just so that you can see a bit more cleanly roughly what a pivoted section should look like. Hopefully there you can see what I'm getting at with this. So each section in reality is actually slightly triangular. It's a bit like an hour hand ticking around a clock. So if you look at it, maybe the first section is like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. Do you see what I mean? So that hour hand is just moving around the head. And lots of people like to liken these sections to pizza slices, orange segments, anything like that. But if you think along those lines, we're going to be in the right place. So let's start this section of the head now. So my first section, I've already got it there taken, but we'll do it again. It's coming from the centre of my cross, and it's going to be just behind the ear. My guideline's coming from the radial section, which we split into 2 earlier. I'm going to use a clip on my head block just to keep this hair we haven't cut yet out of the way, so it's nice and clean for you to see in the cameras. And again, nothing else has changed. Still following the head shape and still doing all the little tricks, measuring, everything's the same. The main difference that's going to happen now is for me to start thinking about the head shape again. Obviously we've already been discussing how the head shape is round, you know, from front to back, ear to ear, you know, vertically the head is obviously round, but what you've got to remember is, what you've got to understand with a round layer is the head shape's also round horizontally, you know, it's round this way. So what that means is we need to give thought to where our hand position is, as well as following the head shape with the vertical line. So what I mean is, this first section that we're going to do here, for instance, my hand needs to be directly above its base. So what I mean by its base is my hand is hovering directly above the section where I've taken it from. I don't want to be pushing the hair forwards or backwards or left or right, depending how you look at it. By moving the hair forward or backwards, you can be building up length or taking length away. So each section with this haircut, my hand needs to be directly above where the section is coming from, where the hair is coming from. So when I do my second section, what I'll actually do to make this happen is take half a step around the head. That will put my hand in the correct position. Half a step around the head for the next one. So by the time I go from the ear to my centre parting at the back, my body should have turned 90 degrees. I should have gone from facing over there to facing here in about 5 sections. And by the time I go from the centre point all the way to the opposite ear, you should be facing backwards over there. And what I'm going to do, for the sake of making it easy for you to see, rather than moving myself, I'm going to move my head. It's the same thing. So first section, Dorothy will be facing forwards. Second section, she'll move around a fraction, then she'll move around another fraction. By the time I get to that centre line, she should have turned 90 degrees, and by the time I get to the other ear, she should be facing away from you. So to keep this shape round horizontally, you need to keep moving yourself. So we're keeping it round vertically by making sure our fingers follow the head shape. We're keeping it round on the other axis, which is horizontal, by making sure we move ourselves and our hand is always directly above the base, hovering above where the hair's coming from, where the section's coming from. So that's very important. So let's get stuck in now. So again, bringing this hair upwards. Got my previously cut hair there. Just because we've got previously cut hair doesn't mean we should get lazy and not check all our little things that we've been doing previously. We also should still keep on top of just keeping that very last piece of hair that we cut and adding that to the next piece of hair to be cut. So can't stress that enough. Just keep the smallest crumb you can get away with of your previously cut section. That's going to save you a lot in the long run. Moving around to this side now. My fingers are definitely above their base. It's the first section. Once you've cut each section, don't forget, don't get lazy. We're going to check it. So I'm going to go back to the front. I'm just going to release a small piece from the very front of Dorothy's head here, just so we've got something to check it against. And I'll reconnect this up. Okay, so I've got this piece of hair released. I'm going to slide this out along my comb, like this, and I'm going to slide my finger and thumb down until I meet it. That's the length. Then we'll check it against the last piece of hair I've just cut here. I bring that along my comb. Does it match? Yes, it does. Happy days. So now, instead of what I want you to do is take half a step around the head. I'm going to turn my model a touch, which will achieve the same thing. Now it's the same as square layer at this point. The habit you need to get into when you work pivoted sections, the square layer and round layer, is that you, as well as taking your next section, so then our hand moves round the clock and we take our new section, as well as that happening, we need to halve the previous section. We need to get some guideline. If we haven't got any guideline at the moment, the guideline is the previous section. So what we do is we take some or half of the previously cut section. That will give us a nice, clean slice to work on. Piece of the pizza, slice of the pie, however you want to look at it. And now I've definitely got some guideline. I've got a nice, clean, pivoted section with plenty of guideline in it. And then we're going to carry on doing what we've already been doing. So again, don't forget your body should be moving around with it. I've turned the head. But you can see, I'll show you what I mean. If I stood where I previously was, without turning the head, you can see I'm pushing this hair forward. If you look at this camera here, pushing the hair forward there. When I bring myself round to the correct position, here, again over here, you can see it's over top. So as I move forward, it makes me over direct. As I bring myself around, it makes me bring it directly above its base in the correct position. That's why body position is so key to this haircut. Okay, let's carry on. So I think you'll agree, for something that's so simple, cut every piece of hair the same length, there's actually, the dynamics of this haircut, there's tons going on within it. Don't let that scare you, it's only hair. It's only a doll, it's not the end of the world, that's what we're here for. Carrying on now under the head, same fashion. Again, don't forget, before we move on, every slice we cut, we're going to bring some hair up the front along the length of our comb. That's the length. marked it on my comb. I'm now going to get a piece of hair from here. That should also reach my fingers, which hopefully you can see it does. Okay, next section. So move yourself around the head here, and then it's the same process. I'm going to unclip this uncut hair. I'm going to take my section from the centre of the cross, then going to re-clip away this uncut hair, and then I'm going to halve our previous section, so we've definitely got some guideline to be working with. Got a nice clean slice of hair, and then we're going to carry on again, making sure we're over our base. So again, we need to make sure we're hovering directly above, we're not pushing or pulling straight over it, and then we'll carry on. Don't forget, ditch most of what you just cut, keep a very small little crumb, be aware of the head shape, keep your fingers parallel to it, don't get lazy. Everything is just the same, we're just taking a step around the head every section. That's the only thing that makes each section different on this, is that we're taking a step around the head each time. Again, if it's being a bit naughty, the hair trying to fall on your hand, a little spray with some water will probably help you out there. If you really have to, you can use a clip, but you shouldn't really need to if you've got enough moisture in the hair. If it's falling on your hand, I would probably say, you know, it's not quite wet enough. Sometimes as well, like I said, you can always pop the head slightly forward, and that can help this under part of the neck. Obviously your head will be easier to move forward if it's a person, because you can just ask them. And again, then we're going to come back to the front, measure up our piece here. So I've got my fingers at the tip of the comb here. So I'm going to slide up the comb like that, my fingers, slide those down the comb, and that will give us the lengthening here, and as you can see, touching my comb, my fingers rather perfectly. Good news. Okay, next section. Turn the head around a little bit so you can see on my fourth section now, the head's almost travelled 90 degrees. Like I said, she was going to start facing over there and she's going to turn all the way around by the time we got to the middle line. That's nearly happened. I've got about 2 sections to go, I would say, so everything's going to plan. So we're going to take a section from our uncut hair, just like we have been previously. I'm going to clip this out of the way. So we've got a nice clean area to work on. Then we're going to halve previously cut section. So we've definitely got some guideline to work with. And then we'll carry on, just being aware of our body position again, like I said. Make sure it's not over or under directing, directly above its own base. As long as you're moving around the head, there's every reason that it should be correct. Again, just keep the very last bit of what you cut. Keeping on top of what the headlines also, the head shape rather, is doing. Again, if you've got pieces falling, quite often just a little spray will help it to stay out of your way, or not. Okay, fourth section completed. So a little measure against the front, so I'm going to slide my finger and thumb on the comb, slide my other thumb and finger underneath it. Let's measure the back. Happy Days meets my thumb perfectly. Okay, fifth section. Now obviously we're approaching the profile guideline that we put in, that we split down the middle. So we're actually going to have two guidelines effectively here. The guideline from this side and the guideline that's been following us. The guideline from the radial section that we've been halving, bringing with us. That's on one side, and the original guideline is on my side. So there's potentially two guidelines here. It should obviously be the same, and there should just be a small amount of hair to come off in the middle. Okay, so let's look at this last section. So you can see now my body position. I've moved around 90 degrees, or we've moved the head in this case. Just making sure that I've got all my section. And it's just a small amount of hair to come off on this. Like I said, it's a bit like a sandwich guideline on both sides now. And a piece of thin hair in the middle, which needs to come off. Again, being careful that we're not pushing or pulling this hair. It's over its own base. That's quite important. Very important. Again, just working down the head until we run out. Okay, that's it. That's 1/4 of the head done. Again, slide your fingers up, slide your fingers down, get your marker, and just chop to the back of here. So looking good. Good news. So once you've got to this position, don't go to the other ear and go to the middle again. Carry on. So pivot from the middle. Sorry, pivot from the ear all the way around to the middle. Once you get to the middle, pivot all the way around to the other ear. Carry on across the whole back. If you're left-handed, go the other way. Start the left-hand ear and pivot all the way around to the right-hand ear. So I'm just going to go straight through now and carry on with this. Okay, so to move on to second quarter, we're going to need to unclip our second quarter at the back. And then once you've done that, just move on straight on to the pivoting sections. I'm going to give mine a bit of a spray because it's been stood there for a while now. And then I'll take my first pivoting section. Centre of that cross to about, I suppose, 7 o'clock, something like that. To clip your uncut hair out of the way, makes life a bit easier, and then we'll do our first pivot. See, I've still got nice, clean, perfect little pizza slices. Get stuck straight there. Okay, first section, the second quarter completed. Measure it against the front. Check it at the back. Perfect. Hang on. I'm going to move on. So again, take a step round the head. I'm going to turn my head. Unclip the uncut hair. Take your next pivoted section from the centre of the cross. Okay, now once you've taken the section, don't forget half the previous section. Make sure you've got some guideline to be working with. then after that, everything's the same. Still being very aware of the head shape. Still making sure we're hovering over our base, not over to the left or to the right, forward or backward, wherever we're looking from. Don't forget, just keep the very last piece of what you cut each time. Check this head position, check you have your guide. Again, move around the head. Trying to keep this top hair out of the way if you can. Please check it. Okay, next section, turn the head slightly. Unclip the uncut hair. Next pivoted section around the head. Strip away the uncut hair. Halve, take some of the previous section. Okay, I'm just going to make sure we've got the moisture on top of this hair. These lights drying out a little again. Again. See now my body position. Dorothy's almost turned completely away from you. She's gone facing you, and she's swung all the way around to looking to this side, and then all the way around to facing me. So she's moved the 180 degrees that we predicted almost already. Again, all the same processes. Keep a very small amount of hair in the previous cut section. Checking your head shape. Ensuring the correct place. Checking you're not left or right, you're definitely directly above the section's base. Carry on. Just move the head over a little bit to help you get under the neck here. And again, do your checks. My fingers perfectly. Okay, I think we're on our last section here now, pretty much. Actually no, I can see in my camera it's a little bit too fat for my liking. I'm going to just subdivide that a little bit more. Never good to get lazy with the sections and just do a big chunky one. Always preferable to do more sections rather than less. Same process, half the previous section. Then we'll carry on. So now as you can see, I've moved myself around. Dorothy's facing away from you. I've travelled the predicted 180 degrees. Checked it every section. Checked the head shape every section. Yeah, that's how to make this haircut work. It's to be very vigilant. Don't get lazy. Don't rest. All these little drills that I've told you, keep them in your head. And if you do, there's every reason to expect your round layer to be as accurate as anybody else's. Don't forget just to be aware of where your hand position is as well, all the time, making sure that we're directly above our base. Then that brings me definitely on to the last section now, this back. I'm going to release the uncut hair. I'm going to halve my previous section from the centre of my cross, down the head. Again, that'll be it. Again, we're in that position where we've got two guidelines effectively. One from the original radial guide, the static guide that's been there the whole time in this haircut, and then the guide that's moving with us. You can see there's not a great deal of hair to come off through here. And again, we'll check that against the front. You can measure it through this side portion, and again, meets my comb beautifully. That is the back of this haircut done. So, like I said, a lot to think about. You know, the head's round in two different places, two different directions. Keeping your hand over its base, checking it. You know, watching the head shape, making sure your fingers are parallel. But all this stuff, if you do it, you should be fine. Cross-checking of this haircut. Obviously, we've measured it to depth. You know, we more or less know this haircut's good. But if you want to refine the shape, make sure there's no knuckle marks or anything like that in it. The way to go about it is to do horizontal sections. So we spoke about this before, but if you do a haircut with vertical sections, you should cross-check it with horizontal sections. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to cross-check it real quick. Okay, so let's check this back. I'm going to take a horizontal section which goes from one ear all the way to the other, straight across the back of the head. I'm going to clip the top out of the way, so that's all nice and clean for me. Then I'm going to take another parting directly beneath the one I've just taken, so probably about an inch or so down will be about right. That is going to give us a nice channel across the back of the head. And then what we should have here is a line that follows the head. We pull it out with our fingers like this. We're going to walk around the head and just polish the line. If it needs anything, take something off. If it doesn't, then don't. But obviously we know we've got lines that follow the head shape vertically. What we should also have is lines that follow the head shape horizontally as I move around the head. So that's what we should have. I'm going to carry on working around my head just to make sure that is what we have. You can see I'm moving around, and you should be looking for anything that's getting longer, getting shorter, anything like that. I mean, hopefully, you know, you won't have any areas which you get longer or shorter. Any little tiny bits of dust, you know, clean them up. Obviously, big long bits, go back to your technique and find it properly. You can do this low down the head as well, so we could be taking a section below now, doing the same process under here. You can also do it up high. You can do it wherever you want. Pretty much when this haircut's done, you should be able to take a section through it on any angle, in any position, and what you pull out should follow that line. That's what round layer is. So that's the back completed, and we'll do the sides. Okay, so it's time for the sides now. I'm going to start with the right hand side, it's just my personal preference. I'm going to unclip it first of all. Now, as I already mentioned, the sides, the fronts of this haircut, they're not pivoted. We pivoted around the back, and I'm going to work with vertical sections working towards the front. Just like that radial guide that we did originally, we're going to carry on taking more sections which are just like it, working forwards. You could pivot this whole haircut if you really wanted to, but for me I find it makes the haircut a bit simpler just to work with vertical sections through the side. But if you want to pivot the whole thing, then you certainly could. So we're going to start now with these sections. Again, I'm just going to give my head a quick spray. And then I'm going to take my first section just in front of my radial guide we had in there from the beginning of this haircut. And I am going to use the previously cut hair from behind as my guideline. Do everything we've been doing before, being very conscious at this point of my fingers being over their base. Because I'm stood from the back here, quite easy to pull these sections back towards me and over direct. obviously don't be pushing forward either. So just try and keep directly above that base, and everything else that you've done previously, carry on doing. A very small amount of what you've previously cut, moving it around here. So don't forget, we're not going to get lazy now. We're still measuring this up. That front piece here, and then we're checking it. This piece we just cut perfectly, which is good news. Okay, so same process as at the back. We're going to halve previously cut section, and then we're going to move forward at the same time. Again, being careful that I'm above my base, not pulling it back, pushing it forwards, keeping a very small amount of what I've just cut. Moving on. Again, do our checks. Probably looking at about 4, maybe 5 sections through these front portions, but yeah, same process. Halve one, take one, halve one, take one. These head blocks you tend to have quite a small, tiny little last section to do. That's the way they're made. So don't forget as well the head shape rounding off around the face to be directly above the base a little bit. The head, to follow the head shape, the hair needs to come slightly forward as you approach the face there. See, I've got a great deal of hair coming off now on my head block. Still not going to get lazy though, I'm still going to check it. That's just how it is. Good news, reaches my front, and that just leaves this very tiny chunk right at the face there to do now. Just going to make up the last piece of this side, which is right next door to my original guy, but I'll check it anyway, just for the sake of being a good boy. There we are, happy days. The whole back, one side completed. Now same as before, don't forget, if we want to check this, we've used vertical sections, haven't we? So we're going to check it with a horizontal section, like this, going backwards across the head. We'll take the top out of the way, we'll take a little parting beneath that parting as well, and then it's this slice that we're going to just check our lines and make sure it's nice and clean, coming around the head, no long bits, no short bits. And it's a nice round line following the head shape, not getting any longer or shorter, which it is. So I'm happy with that. Now that just leaves our last little side section to do. Okay, so the second side now, I'm just going to drop it down first of all. I'm going to just add a little bit of moisture again, just to make it a bit more workable. See all this nice length waiting to come off. And yeah, we'll get start straight in. Take a section. I've already got guideline here from the beginning of the haircut. And that's where we're going to begin. There you go. Notice my body position as well is different, because I want to always make sure my fingertips are pointing down. I'm never upside down like this. I've now walked around the head, or I've turned the head, but in the salon I did the first side standing from the back. I've done this second side standing from the front, just to make sure that I've always got as straight a back as is humanly possible whilst we work through this haircut. again, we're going to use a piece to do our checks. Good news, that's correct. And we can do the same process of taking one and then halving one. Don't forget, don't get out of this habit of just keeping the very last bit of the cut. And I keep saying it, but it's important to drum it in to make sure that we don't forget, we keep ourselves well drilled in this haircut. And don't forget your checks also. Okay, carry on. Take a section, half the previous. Again, in that area where the head shape actually comes slightly forwards. Everything else other than that, exactly the same. And just keep the very last bit each done. Days. Now our very last section right at the front here, it's a very small piece on this head block. Still going to treat it with the same respect. Just make sure everything's the same way. Okay, again just measure everything up now. Just like we always have been with this haircut, very important. To make sure everything meets our comb, which it does, and also don't forget we can do our nice horizontal check now through this haircut. Also, looking out for any long bits, short bits. Making sure everything stays nice and round. Any little tiny imperfections, bits of dust, don't be afraid to take them off, but anything bigger, we definitely need to be going back to our technique to find it. So that's it. Now we're going to move on to the blow dry and see how she's looking. Okay, so we're going to get on with the blow dry now. I'm going to be using a Denman brush for this. I'm essentially going to be pushing the hair all around the head, wrap drying it, using the head's own shape to set the hair on, and using my Denman just to tuck it under a little bit, just to give it a very loose kind of swingy effect. Once it's dry, I'm going to probably bring the length up a touch as well. The reason I'm going to use Denman also is that I want it just to be, I don't want to over blow dry it so you can't see the shape. I want you to see it as close to its natural form as possible. So that's why I'm going in with Denman. So we'll do that and then we'll talk about any refinements afterwards. Okay, so this is the head blow dried. Now I'm just going to go through and take some weight out from it, soften some of the ends. Again, go back to square layer here. It's very similar to what we did there. I'm going to go through it some horizontal sections, going through the sides first of all. We're going to point cut some little bit of weight out of it, soften the ends. Then we'll do the same through the back. And I'm going to take some length from the back also. I think at the moment that's what it can do with. And also a little bit from probably from the fringe, so let's just get in there and do that now. Again, I'm going to bring it up, find my hard line, and then just soften it. Again, I'm not using a very aggressive angle here, I'm not taking chunks out of this. Just very gently softening the hard line I don't want to see in this. Once I've done it, keep that in your hand like this, and then just take another horizontal section just below it, roughly an inch or so down, maybe a bit more on some people, maybe a bit less. And I'll let go now, first section, pick up the new one, again find my line. Begin to soften it once again. Use the recomb to get hold of the front part. Do. Again, comb horizontal section back. Cut this new section. Drop the hair from above. Pick it up. Pick that on this very last section at the bottom here, just to make sure got a nice even balance of the soft ends. You can see already that's made quite a nice difference through this side of the haircut. Now we'll do that also on the other side. Okay, so we're going to carry that on now on the opposite side, again with horizontal sections just coming across the head, trying to locate a hard line, which I can see there, and then again just taking the weight from it, softening that line. And obviously being parted on the side there's less sections to work with, so take a new one. Keep hold of the top until you can grab the new one and let go. And again, just carry on softening those lines. And you'll be surprised, it doesn't take long before you you're really making a difference with this. So start off with less, see how you get on, and don't get too carried away, because then once you cut it off, you can't put it back. So So we're going to repeat this now down the back of the head. So I'm going to start across the crown area first of all, up top here. Same thing, no horizontal sections. Just going to work down the head, you know, until we run out. Looking for any weight, any hard lines I don't like. Again, just softening these lines, but not going too crazy. I'm trying to butcher this haircut, just trying to make it a bit more wearable, you know, a bit lighter. Looking a lot better already. So it's important that when you're doing this sort of thing that you are methodical, you know, you're aware of everywhere you've been, don't just randomly attack, do a bit at the front, do a bit at the back, do a bit, you know, do an area to be happy, you know, work on a side till you think it's nice, work on the back till you think it's nice, and so on. And that way you won't get lost, you should always be on top of, you know, what you've done. So once you're pretty sure you've been everywhere, of course, you know, we can still look at this visually, and you might decide there are areas you still want to work on. Like for me, for instance, looking over here, it's still a little heavy through this corner part. So there's nothing to say you can't, you know, revisit an area to try and find, you know, any other weight. But at first, you know, be methodical, and then use your eye, you know, to see what you're looking for, what you like or what you don't. Okay, so I'm just going to very loosely take this back out. I'm not going to try and do anything that's too definite because it's quite a choppy, light haircut now. I don't really want to put a very hard line in this, it wouldn't really suit the haircut. So I'm going to take a line out with the points of my scissors and just try and keep it quite soft. Obviously, ordinarily one length you might be sectioning up this head, but the fact that this haircut is a round layer means that there is no length at the moment, everything's layered, so a very small amount of hair actually reaches down here, which enables me to be able to go into this and actually bring my line up and work on it as it is in the situ, if you like, in the position where it's going to be worn. So I'm going to come in here, and like I say, I'm just going to try and keep this quite light, this line. Not trying to do anything too perfect at the moment. Just going to have a little look at that, see what I think. Carry it on out this way. So I'm still being careful to make sure there's a visual balance here, but at the same time I'm not going for a definite hard line through it. You know, it's fairly hard, don't get me wrong. You know, it's not jagged to death, but just trying to keep it a bit freer, a bit looser than a blunt cut or a club cut line. Just going to extend that round to this other side over here a little. Just going to make it a slightly better balance. I think I've got a little bit of extra hair on this left hand side at the moment. Byproduct of trying to keep out of the way of the cameras and standing in funny places. As you can see now in the close up, it's a loose line, but I'm just going to break it up a little further with the points of the scissors also, just like we have done with the rest of the haircut. Just to make sure it's light and soft. And already that's made it look a little something like you might actually want to wear on your head. Going to do some work on the front now also. Okay, so just around the front of Dorothy's hair now, I'm not quite happy with this fringe area here, so I'm going to do a little bit of freehand work, just just to make it a bit more pleasing on the eye. So tilt her head back slightly. I'm just going to shorten a little area around her eye here, and I'm going to use a slide cutting technique, which essentially means I'm going to be opening and closing my scissors very, very slightly, not all the way, and using this kind of back edge of my blade just to remove a little bit of length. I'm going to be holding the hair over here with a little bit of tension, just very lightly. I'm just very lightly going to take out a little bit of detail and length around the front of the face here. Just to make it a bit more pleasing for my eye and client's eye, but obviously if you're doing a real person. As well, this slide cutting technique can be used just to take a little bit of weight through the fringe as well, just by opening and closing the blade, bringing them through the hair. Just going to take a smidge more from the very end up here. It's looking a bit nicer now. I'm also going to do a little bit of work around the side of the face around here also. Just going to repeat that kind of process, just adding a little bit of detail, blending this kind of fringe area that you end up with this haircut into those sides in the same kind of fashion, just to make it a bit more visually pleasing to me. Already starting to look a bit better, and I might just do a little also around this side here, just to get a better blend from the short fringe area into the sides. I'm just going to use some more slide cutting through here. There we go. I think a little bit of styling product in this, and yeah, she's going to be looking good. Okay, so I popped a little bit of product through Dorothy's hair just to finish it off, give it a bit of volume, a bit of texture. You can see you ended up quite a nice textured, loose shape, which I think, is actually, for a round layer, which is a very simple haircut, quite one-dimensional really. It can look, I think, quite nice once you've, like I say, gone round at the end, bring the length up, do some adjustments around the face, and yeah, in the end, I think you end up with something quite good. So that's it, round layer, Jet Hairdressing Academy.